Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us on yet another present day production live stream. It's Sunday once again. If you've never seen us before and you have no idea who we are, my name is James, and I had a really good intro thought of about 5 minutes ago, and I've completely forgotten it. So, on to the next person.
And hello, I'm Mark, and this week I've ironed my lab coat, although not very well.
You scared Flopcat. Poor Floppy. Anyway, here we are. We are here this evening live streaming with a reindeer, and I will be going shortly to eat his face. Poor Sam. Sam Deer, that's your new name.
I don't think it's a real reindeer.
He's not a real reindeer.
There's someone under it that we might know.
I've come here to broker a peace agreement.
Never. War against them forever.
Okay. All right, well.
Oh, it is Sam.
Yeah.
Oh.
There you go.
Bit of a letdown, really. I thought there was actually going to be a reindeer.
Yeah.
What a shame.
It's quite good, though. It's a good mask, isn't it? Look at
It is a good mask.
It's actually really freaky.
It is. Where'd you get that?
Oh, mate.
Masks
Touch
are
it
us.
as well.
It's Halloween. It's perfect time for a...
It's the weirdest.
Ugh. Feels like it's made of reindeer.
Yeah, don't say that.
Oh, no, it's not. It's not made of reindeer.
Vegan
Don't worry.
mask.
Floppy's looking scared, like we're going to turn him into a mask in a minute. We've got a floppy cam. But yes, so we are here this evening, as it says in the title, to build one of our present-day production Mum8 amps. Now, we had loads of great feedback on the Mum8 cabinet build about 2 weeks ago, and so we thought the natural follow-on to that would be to finish a build with what we finish off with, and that is the amplifier. So we have Mr. Labcoat over there. Hello, Mr. Labcoat.
Hello.
And he is going to be doing some electronics. We've got a camera pointing at the amp as well, so you can see all the magical things that happen. So make sure to say hi in the comments if you haven't already, so we can check in on who's watching us. And right, where do we start? Do you want to give us a quick intro about what we're going to be kind of looking at here? How are you going to tackle it?
Yeah, can do. I haven't actually really got a clue, because as usual, I put no preparation into this whatsoever, other than ironing the lab coat and conglomerating a collection of tools. So anyway, this kind of continues on from the last live stream we did, not the one last week with Jez, but the one the week before where I built a cabinet, which generally went down very well. Had a few negative comments, didn't we? Is there one you'd like to share with us in particular?
Yeah. So, right, to preface this, I don't normally Google this, because one of the best bits of advice I ever got was, if you have any kind of influence on the internet, don't Google yourself. And we are by no means massive, but people do talk about us on the internet. And there was one fine fellow who I Google present day production Mum8 because I just get curious. And quite often there's some nice feedback. Sometimes there's people saying they don't agree with what we do. Absolutely fine. Don't really care. But there was this one specimen on Audio Circle forum who, if you look down to the third paragraph, I'll just make it bigger there, said that he really enjoyed...
Can you read it out?
So on the paragraph above, he said he demonstrates how we demonstrate how we build our Mum8 monitors. It's a pretty interesting YouTube video if you have 2 hours to kill listening to a trio of wankers. Now, I don't mind people saying that, you don't like our content. You think that we're just infotainment. Absolutely fine. Everyone's got an opinion, but that's just shit. Like, we are humans. We have feelings. We're putting this... No, Mark doesn't have feelings.
I just don't.
I don't know if Sam does. Do reindeers have feelings? But no, basically, we are putting this information out totally free of charge. We're showing you what we're doing on our Sunday evenings when I could be sitting in the bath playing with a rubber ducky. But instead...
Have we yet verified whether we are or are indeed not wankers?
Well, unfortunately, we will not know. But I would hope that from all the comments that we get in the... on the YouTube stream, people like what we do. But anyway, I just wanted to tell you that you suck, and yeah.
Ooh, James seems quite offended by this.
No, I genuinely, I normally...
Last week, he's going for the reindeer. This week, he's going for the specimens.
No, normally, I don't care when I see people writing stuff, but for some reason, this one hit a nerve, because it wasn't saying that our content was shit. It was saying that we're wankers, and I don't think we are. So there we go. I just wanted to let you know you suck.
Are you a wanker?
On the OnlyFans page, yes. But that's a separate thing. What got my goat more, although it still didn't really get my goat, because again, I just don't care, because I know what these people are like, and my overriding feeling is, fuck me, I'm glad I'm not you. The only thing that really got me was the bit about there was a comment or something under it about a round over, why we didn't put a round over on the rear of the hole where the bass driver goes, which a couple of people commented on, and it's because putting a round over on the rear of that hole in a sealed enclosure with the bass driver only operating up to about 400 hertz, it's not going to make the slightest bit of difference to anything.
Well, hopefully they're in the comments, these people.
Yes, well, that's the thing. I would imagine this person...
Oh, no, they won't be live in the comments.
Well, I don't know.
They wouldn't be
So,
live.
you know, may or may not be watching it now. They at least watched the last one because they commented that. So, you know, I just...
Hey, any publicity is
Moving
good
on.
publicity.
But actually,
on.
just quickly, based on that, I had some inspiration because we do know that I quite enjoy making stupid QR code things. So I made a QR code of an angry nerd shouting at the internet, and you can scan that and it will take you straight to our speakers. And yes, there we go. Okay, rant over. On with the amp thing.
Does that work in the same way as lasagna QR code?
It does. It's exactly the same as the QR code lasagna, which I still have loaded up, ready for use at the end.
Excellent.
So what is all this? What are you talking about? Like
What is what? I don't know.
What is an amplifier?
What is an amp?
Well, you know, it just makes things louder, doesn't it?
So it just makes things louder.
Makes things louder.
So can we end the live stream now? Is that it?
Yeah, that's it. So basically, I'm going to put some shit in this box. You're going to put a signal in there, and it's going to come out there, and it's going to make stuff louder. That's basically it. So I don't even need to do it now, do I? So we'll see you next.
There must be something special about it.
We'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. What's special about this?
Yeah.
Yeah, there's lots of things special about it. I don't know about special, but there's lots of things that we incorporated into this that other manufacturers haven't done for whatever reason in the past, and I couldn't really see why, so we just kind of did it, and it works. One of them is like, for example, traditionally with an active studio monitor, you'd have the amplifier in the back of the speaker on a plate, which is great if you're only putting the speakers on stands or on your desk or whatever, but we have some people that want to mount them in soffits, or if you're going gung-ho with a super Atmos system, you might want to put them on the ceiling. You might not be able to get power to where the speakers need to be. You might have your speakers facing a window, in which case having black plate amplifiers when the sun comes streaming through could cause some heating issues because sunlight likes black metallic surfaces. So we just thought it would make sense to put them in a really shallow box, which this is, and have them on the back of the amplifier externally. So firstly, that makes cabinet construction easier, so we can keep the price down a bit more. But it also means you can take them off and you can put them in a standard 19-inch equipment rack and then just run the mains and screen cable, if you want it, to the speaker.
There we go.
That's it. So that's the USP. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open this bad boy using the gift of screwdriver, and then show you what we got inside, which at the moment is not a lot. Little screws, which you can guarantee I'll lose when I need them. Oops. So shout out to Canford Audio, who are making these for us and doing a mighty fine job, because metalwork is not my strong point at all. In fact, I'm struggling to get these screws out, to be honest.
So just quickly, I'm just going to quickly drop in and just double check. Some people said there's connection issues. It looks fine on my end, and not everyone's saying it, so I think it might just be a one-off. I think we're okay. I think we're good. But do shout if things start breaking. And yes, Mark's voice is pumping. So I'm just going to stick these on. I didn't want to wear headphones, but I'm going to because it's less stressful, because Mark's voice is pumping because I've had to basically put the most strong expander on Mark's voice possible, because last time when we were doing the build thing, all you could hear was
just turn it off and I won't breathe.
Okay.
I'll breathe quite. I'd rather be breathing than pumping.
Who misses?
Right, so this is an empty box. It's made of aluminum or aluminium if you're American, or is that the other way around? One of the two. And so it helps with heat dissipation. So we're using a Class D amplifier module, which I'll talk about a little bit later on. And there's a common misconception that they don't get warm. They do get warm. They don't get as warm as a Class A or a Class AB, but they do still get warm, and you do still need to take the thermal issues into account when you're designing it, because the number one thing that a studio monitor has to do is be reliable and work, because if you turn it on and nothing happens because something's overheated or whatever, then it doesn't matter what it sounds like because it doesn't bloody work. So the first thing is reliability. It's got to be absolutely bomb-proof in operation. So that's kind of what we've gone for here. So first thing I'm going to do is connect some mains, and that involves a tiny little bit of drilling because we want to make sure we get a good earth connection with the, can you see that on the close-up camera?
Just about, yep.
I'm just basically taking, so this is powder coated, I'm just basically taking that off so as we get a good earth connection. Now some people will say, why have you powder coated the inside of the amplifier, the inside of the case? Doesn't that affect the thermal conductivity from the amp to the outside world? And the answer is yes, it does, but not enough to make any difference. We've tested it with or without, and it really didn't make any difference at all. So let's get rid of the dust. From there, normally I'd blow this out with an air compressor, but for the sake of the demo this evening I won't. I shall give it a little wipe with my little pink wonder cloth.
Lovely.
Yes. Wipey, wipey. There we go. Turn it around the other way, just because, I don't know why, because actually.
To keep it interesting.
Yeah, that's it, keep it interesting. So, mains. We're using again, we tried lots of different options for this, and this was the best one we found. This is a filtered 10 amp mains input. So, it's got headroom for the amp draws 6 amps maximum, so 10 amp gives us plenty of headroom, but it's filtered, so it'll, if you've got any noise in your main signal, it actually filters it out and gives you a cleaner signal with lower distortion, which is good. So this pops in thus, get it around the right way, and they've got like little springy things on there, so we've got to make sure we get those.
They look like they would do some damage to my fingers if I were the one building the amp.
Be bleeding already if you were
I would.
doing this. There we go, that's snapped in, and then the little lugs I'm just going to open up with this flathead screwdriver just to make sure it's not going anywhere. And I've just realised I'm blind as a bat, so I'm going to put my charity shop reading specs on.
Yeah, I don't even think they're proper glasses, are they? They're ones that you just found.
Yeah, they're just reading, they just magnify everything by 2. So as I can see stuff. Right, there we go, so that's in there. And then next thing I'm going to do actually is put this in, because I'll need some room to get my fingers around before I start wiring things. So this is the NL8.
If you hold it down a little bit, I can see it on the close-up cam.
Yep.
Yep.
So you can actually put it in either way around. You can put it in that way around, like that, and that would work fine. But it's a bit it's a bit neater if we put it in the other way around, like that, because it's just nice and flush and you don't see the big bulky bit, and it looks a bit neater. These we've had huge problems with. There are an epic number of these out in the world where the positive pin, so this is an 8-way connector, so you could connect 4 drivers to this. There's a 1 plus and a 1 minus and a 2 plus and a 2 minus. There are an awful lot of these out in the world at the moment where the positive connections aren't going from the back to the front reliably, and we've had to send back, I think, about 40%.
It's a huge number, especially considering how expensive they are.
Yeah, so they're like 13 quid each, so it's not, you'd expect it to work. And with the Nitri name on it, traditionally it would work. What's happened with their manufacturing or not, I don't know. That we've had problems with a few other sort of XLRs and things which haven't been completely reliable as well. So I don't know what's going on with the finest German brand of connector in the world. Maybe they've outsourced a lot of the manufacturing to somewhere else and it's all turned to shit. I really don't know. But anyway, the first thing I do when we get a batch of these in is I have to sit here with a multimeter and test each one to make sure it works and that it works reliably, which is extremely dull and tedious. So Nitri, get your act together. Anyway, I'm going to screw this in from behind because
Quickly, before you start screwing, can you please put your phone on airplane mode? Because where you're using an unbalanced lav mic, I can hear...
it's a balanced lav mic.
Oh, it's got an XLR on it, so yeah.
Actually, I'll just turn it off because I don't need to see the comments, do I?
No.
Excuse me.
We'll blame it on you anyway, even if it wasn't.
Blame it on the boogie. Right, that's off. Let's get screwing. Talk amongst yourselves while I do this bit. This is a bit boring.
So, Sam, Mr. Reindeer.
Mr. Reindeer's gone.
So
Rudolph has left the building.
No.
How much of the speaker buildy thing have you been following along with? Have you seen any of the inside gubbins of an amp before, or is this all new to you?
I'm still trying to get my head around. So I know what an amp is from the sense of I have an amp that I plug my guitar in, for example.
Lovely.
That's an amp to me. And then Mark's also talking about amps, 6 amps. So we've got amps and then we've got amps.
Should we clarify?
I think we
amps
should.
Feeding amps? I'm confused.
Yes.
Yes. So the amp I'm building is short for amplifier because it makes quite things louder. And there's different types of amplifier. We can talk about those as well if you want. And we'll also talk about how this powers each driver and blah, 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 blah. The other sort of amps is short for ampere, A-M-P-E-R-E, which is basically a unit of current.
I feel slightly less stupid.
Good.
Thank you.
I don't think it's a
So
stupid question.
when you hear people talk about a 13 amp plug.
Yeah, and I'm always thinking, well, 13 amps?
That doesn't mean it can power 13 amplifiers.
Oh, right.
What a letdown.
Yeah.
Talking of connectors, because we were just on that topic, Cheapo Card Company said, instruct Floppy to check the connectors, although can you teach an old cat new tricks? That's funny. Honestly, I absolutely love Cheapo Card Company's sense of humour is right up my alley. I love it.
So ampere. Is
Yes,
that how you-
A-M-P-E-R-E.
Ampere.
Ampere.
So with power and etc., you get volts, amps, watts, blah, blah, blah. They all interact. And that is your 1
So
minute
you could
physics
kind of think of it as, you couldn't really think of it like that, but as kind of analogy for someone like you would be, so you've got volts and amps. So coming out of generally our sockets on the, in the UK, I've dropped my nuts.
This late in life.
Yeah. Is, oh, where's that gone? It's all right, I'll get a spare. Yeah, you've got generally 240 volts, 13 amps.
Yeah.
If you imagine a water pipe, volts is kind of the amount of water that's going through it, and amps is kind of the pressure with which it's going through.
So how much you force through.
So if you've got 0 amps, you've got no voltage dribbling out.
Yeah.
If you've got lots of amps, then it's coming out with some gusto.
Gusto.
Why are you doing 10 amps when you only need 6?
It's just so there's some headroom. So if the amp does, because you've got some headroom in the amplifier, so that can temporarily produce sort of more than it's capable of. So just to give you, oh bloody hell, I've thrown the other nut now. Just to give you some headroom, like you might do with a mic preamp. You really turn a mic preamp all the way up, because then you can clip it. You give yourself some headroom.
Exactly. There was a question here just asking
could you
what
just pass
the...
me that little, because I can't stand up because I'm wide in. Could you just pass me that little plastic? Oh no, it's all right. I've got one here.
There was a question asking what the standard for British plugs is. It's 13 amps. If we're talking about our 3-pin plug sockets, it's 13 amplificationage.
Not amplification. That's confusing. It's the other amps.
Just trying to throw Sam off.
Where are we?
Where are we? What country are we in? But yes, you can go much higher. You can have connectors with 16 amps. You can have, I can't remember the next one up, but I know you can have, I think it's 100 on some of the biggest connectors in like big music venues and theatres and stuff like that. Huge big red connector like that, a chunky boy. And
Oh, not the boy.
not this again.
And
Oh,
there's
bloody
no
hell.
difference between, say, different countries with the amount of voltage or ampage.
I think
running
there's a
through.
difference for general plug sockets.
So,
I'm aware of.
So Americans run on 120 volts,
Yeah.
which generally means that for a given wattage required, they'll draw more amps. Because it's all maths. and stuff. I won't bore you with it. Yeah, so the lower the voltage to get the same amount of power, you need more amps. So
there we go.
So is that not something you need to consider when you're...
Yeah, where it's going and different markets and...
Yeah.
Yes, so just to clarify, because this
like
is a
that.
question that we've actually had quite a lot, is if we send speakers to a foreign land somewhere, do the amps account for the difference in voltage? And the answer is yes. So
Yes.
there's an auto-switching power supply that will go between 230 volts, 120, or whatever you've got in your country. So the speakers should just be plug and play. You just stick them in to the power and it should be good to go.
Well, I'm really glad that we cleared that up, guys.
Yeah.
There we
Really
go.
glad.
Confusion cleared.
And the filter I put in is different for countries on lower voltage
Yes.
as well. It's got even more headroom. So
Manny just commented and said, "What a conversation!" Honestly,
Wow.
we have the best audience
Honestly.
for.
Three
Puns.
wankers in a room talking about amps.
I know. I hope that person's watching. I really do.
This is where I tell you that it was me.
I mean, I wouldn't put it past you. So the person's username was Marvin something, but it was like a Looney Tunes character, so his name isn't actually Marvin. But I'm going to call him Marvin the Melt.
This has really wound you
It
up,
has.
hasn't it?
It actually has. Like normally, I really don't care, but sometimes there's just one thing that just clicks, and then I hate this person forever, and then make QR codes with their face on it, and then. But yes, Mark, how's it going in speaker ampy world?
I must apologise to the audience. This is considerably more boring than I thought it was going to be at the moment. It's because I'm doing a particularly fiddly bit, and every time I talk, my nuts drop.
Oh, you should
So I'm
probably
just
see a
gonna-
doctor about that.
I'm just going to get this done, and then we can move on.
So if you have any questions about the amps, about how they work, about what we're putting in them, feel free to ask, and we will come to that while Mark's over there fiddling with his nuts. So just to give a quick overview, what we use it within these amps, as I'm sure not mum, you're not my mum, as I'm sure Mark will come to in a moment, is Hypex Class D amplification and DSP, and we're going to be putting that into the amps on this very stream, so you'll see all the lovely details. And we have done lots of experimentation over the last week, haven't we, Mark? Comparing the Hypex Class D amps with a very expensive, I think it was about 11 grand, Chord Class AB amplifier, commonly used in hi-fi worlds, and the differences were...
Well, what is the difference between
Interesting.
a Class D and a Class AB?
So class, again, I'll try and keep it really... I'll try and
Short.
come up-
No,
try and come up with
imagine you're talking to the audience and not to me.
All right, okay, let's go into some depth. Right, so imagine I'm drawing in air, because I should have a Rick Beato style whiteboard behind me, shouldn't I? But I haven't. So imagine a sine wave, and the sine wave goes up and down. So imagine a line through the middle of it, which is 0, and it goes up into the positive and it goes down into the negative, and it has to do both, otherwise it doesn't work. So you might be going +6 and you might be going -6. A Class A amplifier amplifies that entire sine wave, and it's running, the components that enable that are running all the time. So you could argue that Class A is the purest form of audio amplification because it's doing it all the time. The downside of that is efficiency. A Class A amplifier typically runs at about 15% efficiency. So if you've got a 200 watt Class A amplifier, it's basically a space heater. It's putting more, it's 85% of what it's doing is generating heat, 15% of what it's doing is amplifying your audio. So a lot of audiophile purists say that Class A is the best, blah, 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 blah. There aren't many people using Class A these days unless they're idiots, basically, because it's a very inefficient way to do it. Then you've got Class B. What Class B does is it amplifies the positive as one transaction and the negative as another transaction. So you've got two sides of an amplifier doing half the work. So they're a lot more efficient. you can get, I think you get up to about 50 or 60% efficiency with those. The downside of that is there's some crossover distortion where the part of the amplifier doing the positive stops and the part of the amplifier doing the negative starts. You can get crossover distortion there because of the way transistors work and other stuff. So then they came up with Class AB, which is kind of a combination of the two. Class AB enables some bleed through from, so it enables the side of the A class amplifier doing the top, the B class amplifier doing the bottom. It enables some crossover, some bleed through. So the A is doing some of the B's work and the B is doing some of the A's work, if that makes sense. So much more efficient. They're about 75% efficient on a good day, but still create heat and still create a little bit of distortion because you've got that crossover distortion as well. A Class D amplifier works in a completely different way. The traditional amplifiers amplify linearly, so they're based on the amplification they're putting out is based on the amplitude of the signal, whereas with a Class D amplifier it isn't, it's based on switching. Now lots of people think that the D in Class D stands for digital, and it doesn't, it's the next class up. So yes, there is a Class C as well, but they're very noisy and they're used in things like radio transmitters and stuff like that. So there is a Class C amplifier, but it's not used in audio, it's used for other stuff. So D was the next letter along, which is why they're called Class D. And they work on a pulse width modulation system, and they don't use the amplitude of the signal as the basis for the amplifier. They switch between, I don't know how to put it into a sentence, to be honest with you. I don't really understand how Class D works as well as I do how the other classes work, because I'm old and I used to fix Class A amps and Class AB amps, and with a Class D amp I've got absolutely no idea what's going on with it. It's trickery and pixie dust, but it basically switches on and off very quickly. So the downsides of that in the early days where you could get a lot of sort of switching distortion at very high frequencies because it's working at a very high frequency, and it's not turning the signal into a digital signal, but it is kind of digitizing it by switching it on and off very quickly, and then you have to have a low-pass filter on the end of it. So it kind of works similarly to a DAC, but not. It's a completely different way of amplifying a signal, basically, and it's very efficient. Most Class D amplifiers, good modern ones, are around 95% efficient. So with a Class A amp, 15% of your power is creating the audio, 85% is creating heat. With a Class D amp, 95% is creating your audio, and 5% is turning to heat. That
was a very good explanation.
Oh, thank
you very much.
So what was going on so we put our amp packs on Jez's K100s, which you would have seen if you watched last week's live stream.
Just quickly, before you come to that, some people are having issues, and I'm seeing it as well. It's an issue with YouTube streaming server. It's not our internet. This is YouTube in general having some issues. It's working, but I know there is some buffering going on. And I've just checked, and it's actually YouTube's streaming server is having some issues.
Why do that when we're live?
I know, so inconvenient. Why does it have to go wrong when we're streaming? And it's not even our fault this time.
Anyway, so what we did with Jez's K100s this week is not really a fair comparison, because not only were we going from Class AB to Class D, but we were also going from passive to active. So one of Jez's three-way big K100 floor-standing loudspeakers has a passive crossover in it, so it only needs one channel of amplification. That channel of amplification is connected to the passive crossover, which passively, i.e. it's not powered, then divides the signal up into the three different bands required for each driver, as Jez explained last week, using big chunky components. What we're doing here is we're doing the splitting of frequencies for the drivers digitally in DSP, and then each speaker driver in the MUM8 has its own dedicated amplifier. So the amplifier that's connected to the tweeter is only amplifying high frequencies. The one dedicated to the mid driver is only working with the mid driver, and the one dedicated to the bass driver is only working the bass driver. There are many advantages of that, which is why most studio monitors these days are active. And there are advantages to passive as well, which is why hi-fi people prefer passive. That's because you can hear differences in your choice of Class A or Class AB amplifier, etc. You can hear differences in things upstream because they like to play with different preamps and DACs and stuff like that, whereas we don't. We just want to plug an XLR in and have it work. So it wasn't really a fair comparison on the class of amplifiers, but a huge difference on the way that we were driving the speaker, and it was quite night and day, really. And I think Jez was quite impressed at how good DSP and Class D sounds these days, because he's tried it before a few years ago with the previous generation and it wasn't so good, but now it really is stunning.
I mean, I think it was even an eye-opening experience for us, wasn't it? See how close you can get, or not how close you can get in comparison, because they were very different sounding amps, but how the quality is still there, even with a much more efficient amp system, using much more new technology, using DSP, which I know isn't used so often within hi-fi world in particular.
Yeah, I mean, to my ears, so and again, we're listening for different things. I'm a mastering engineer, I'm listening for accuracy, and I'm looking for translation. I want to know that what I'm doing translates to other systems in the world. So I don't want a speaker or an amplifier colouring the sound. I want the equivalent of being able to plug an XLR into my head and hearing it as cleanly as possible.
There's an idea for Elon Musk.
Yeah,
You could collaborate, just plug in music straight into your brain.
Mum-8 implant.
Yeah.
And to my ears, when we run the K100s actively, using the Hypex amps, it was just a completely different speaker. It went from being a hi-fi speaker, a really, really bloody good one, to an astounding studio monitor.
There were also some differences as well with the actual voicing of the speakers, because, and this was a conscious decision, so in the natural voicing of the K100s in a passive crossover setup, like passive Class AB amplification as well, they are voiced for hi-fi. They are voiced, you can tell I've not had enough coffee today, they are voiced to make music exciting to listen to, they're voiced to bring the best out of every listening experience within a hi-fi environment. Whereas with the Mum-8s, they are designed to be more flat, more technically accurate, even if that is technically less exciting in some cases, but not all. In some cases we preferred that. In some cases we preferred the K100s. And so when we put them onto the Class D amplification with our DSP, that meant I voiced them to be more flat, removing some of the bumps that are found within the K100's voicing. And so they sounded more like studio monitors. So it was interesting to see how you can change how a speaker behaves completely just by swapping some components out and having that extra control that DSP gives you, because obviously within the passive crossover world, you can change the sound bit by bit, but that basically means with every change you want to make, you have to take the crossover apart and you have to stick another capacitor in or another resistor, or change various parts of the circuitry, and it's not a quick change. Whereas to get the K100s to the point where they sounded, I don't want to say they sound the same because they don't, they're very different with different drivers, but where they sounded alike with the Mum-8s in that they could be a studio monitor, didn't take so long. It was about an hour maybe of tweaking the DSP. It really wasn't too much hard work, so you can get a long way with the technology that we're using in the Mum-8 in not so much time. Having said that, when we were designing the Mum-8s, I did about 250 odd iterations of the DSP, because obviously we had to get there first. Now, because I've done it so many times, I kind of know what I'm looking for, and so it doesn't take so much time. But yeah, so there's a quick overview of what we've been doing over the last week. Back to Labman.
The K100 sounded much closer to the Mum-8s as well.
They did, yes.
Having a flatter, more accurate response.
Exactly. Because I think the main difference we heard was the ribbon driver, which naturally has a huge bump in the kind of, I believe it was 8K to about 14K region. And although, as I said, not a hater at all, it sounds fantastic in a hi-fi setting. It accentuates the excitement in the music quite well, but in a studio world, that isn't something you want. So, making those changes to bring it closer to essentially what a Mum-8 sounds like, despite the driver changes, was where we ended up. So the ribbon tweeter, despite actually measuring the same as the Mum 8 after I'd done this DSP change, still sounded different, because obviously there are other things at play. There's distortion, there's this, there's that, and those all add up to a different sound, even though they look the same on a graph. So it was an interesting learning experience for sure, and one that we were all enjoying, I think.
I really enjoyed working on the ribbon tweeter as well, because it's as good as the Bleesma tweeter is in the Mum 8. The ribbon tweeter is much lighter. The diaphragm is much lighter. The diaphragm's also the conductor, and it's just hugely open and detailed, and it's just a wonderful tweeter, isn't it?
It is an amazing tweeter.
Yeah, it's a lot more expensive than the Bleesma, even the Beryllium.
Sure.
Tweeter, but I think we've been talking to Jez this week, and we think there's good potential for a
collaboration
/ PDP collaboration.
So that's something we are very excited about indeed. That'll be coming in the future. But first, I want to say a big thank you to Reforge, who's given us €100 donation.
What?
That is incredibly kind and generous. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much indeed.
And probably one of the best comments I've actually seen in quite a while. Have you read it already?
Reading this out.
Reforge said, how do you make sure that Mark's negative digital aura won't affect the amps and DSP during assembly? I was thinking full body condom.
He's on fire at the moment.
Amazing. So
they're in highly protective bags.
They are indeed. So
these are basically these aren't for static. These are to keep my aura out of the component.
They're anti-mark bags. But no, first of all, thank you so much for the donation. That's an incredibly generous amount. We really appreciate it. It does mean a lot. To answer your question, yes, we have full body condoms. No, we don't. So for those who are out of the loop, Mark has basically got this magical aura of anti-technology, which is where...
He does, doesn't he?
He really does. So, and as an example, I was sitting editing a YouTube video a couple of months ago. I'd been sitting there for 8 hours, maybe 9 hours, not a single issue. I've got a really decent PC, it doesn't struggle at all. As soon as Mark walked in for the first time that day, because he'd been in his own room doing mastering and bits and bobs, the computer just crashed. It blue screened. Literally the second he walked in.
Although, today, the second he walked in, things started working.
That was odd.
Today.
I'm not going to lie. That was pretty odd. But no, as a general rule, you're right. Today, Mark actually fixed it by entering the room. But normally, as soon as Mark enters the room, anything that's happening with computers or tech or anything, it'll just fry itself. Apart from, I think the closest he can get to like digital stuff is holding a DSP board. Like you can hold it in your hands and then it'll be fine. It's just when I'm doing DSP things on a computer, Mark is banished from the room, so he doesn't.
Can we just get a close up of Mark licking that?
I'm not really licking it because it's operating at about 300 degrees centigrade.
Yes, so public health and safety, don't lick solder.
What I'm doing here is, as according to YouTube stats, most of our audience, or the highest percentage of viewers, are in the US of A. I'm going full on with me Americanisms today. So we've had the aluminum case, and now I'm soldering.
Don't forget squirrel.
You're what?
Soldering.
Soldering?
Soldering.
Can't you get arrested for that?
Probably.
Yes. Do you remember there was a video we did ages ago where you tried mispronouncing squirrel?
Squirrel.
Squirrel.
There we go.
Sounds like a chocolate bar that Cadbury might come out with.
I'll have a Cadbury squirrel.
There we go. Oh, we can get a nice close up there. There we go, doing some soldering.
Soldering badly.
There have been quite a few decent comments coming in. As usual, I'm trying to do things and not miss them all.
Oh, look, someone said, has anyone seen the Tom Hanks movie where that happens?
What, soldering?
Tom Hanks. You were on about Tom Hanks, weren't you, last week?
Yeah, that's the one movie we didn't talk about. What was it? Shaving Ryan's Privates? No.
Shaving Ryan's
Privates. What's it called? What's the film called? I think that's the one that our esteemed viewer is referring to.
It must be.
We're rapidly approaching my favourite bit of the process. This happens at several times. Sorry, this bit's really boring. I don't know why I didn't just do this afternoon. It's just watching someone solder 3 cables to a mains connector is really boring, isn't it? And there's a reason why I'm soldering them and not crimping them, and it's because it's just more reliable, and you get a better connection, and it eliminates the potential for people to pull them off and stick them back on the wrong way around. But my favourite part of the process, can we see this assembly here on the camera?
Move it that way a bit.
Move it that way a bit. Is that good?
Yep.
Is this bit, the heat shrink.
Oh, satisfying heat shrink. Look, he's even got a heat gun. He's even got a heat gun. It's quite a satisfying noise as well, actually.
Look at that go down. Whoa, turbo mode.
Jesus, I think we're deafening people. Sorry about that. I've had to turn you down a bit.
I was going to say something incredibly rude then, but I'm not.
Please don't.
Okay, so there we go. Look, that's all nice and neat and tight and super on there now. So now an exciting bit, we get to screw in an amplifier module. So this is the Hypex NC252, and it gives us 2 channels, 250 watts a channel into 4 ohms. There's 3 parts of the unit. There's the power supply, which
How many
is
ohms?
4.
4 ohms.
Not ohms.
Okay, explain quickly what ohms are.
Ohms are a measure of resistance. So the more ohms, the more resistance.
There we go.
OHMS or inductance.
I'm sorry.
It's all right. So the amplifier consists of 3 parts. Part 1 is the power supply, and parts 2 and 3 are the channels of amplification. Now, somewhat unbelievably, the power supply goes from there to there. So all of that,
Half the amp.
all of that is power supply. And then that's 1 channel of amplification, and that's 2 channels of amplification. So if anyone with a 250 watt valve guitar amp, you know the size of the amp in that and the weight of it. This, we're just getting basically 250 watts from, well, that's filtering. So we're really just getting 250 watts from that, which is absolutely bonkers. So this, I'm now going to screwsy into here. Yeah.
I'm just trying to find a comment that came in earlier that was really good, but I've completely lost it now.
Okay, I need to
Sherlock Ohms.
Sherlock Holmes. I need to concentrate on my nuts again now, so I might go quiet for a minute or 2.
Okay, how do you decide when a crossover sounds good? What are you listening for? It seems hard to get right and partly subjective, also bad for OCD. Now, there are obviously numerous ways to tackle this. So it comes, first of all, with... so this is the way that I do it. I first of all start off with basic listening just to check that the 3 channels of the amp are working, that there's something coming out of each driver and it's the correct thing coming out of each driver, and then that they are roughly in the same ballpark in terms of gain, because obviously the drivers have different power requirements, they have different qualities that mean that they need different amounts of power. So the first thing is literally to make sure that the tweeter isn't 15 dB quieter than the woofer, which you'd be surprised actually normally happens on most DSP crossovers that we've done so far. Obviously, once we've done it, it's done and it's repeatable onto every speaker. But yeah, so first of all, get all the drivers roughly in the right ballpark, and then we can start working from there. Take in various measurements like gated measurements, which kind of negate the sound of the room in which we're working. Obviously, I don't do that in here because, as you can hear, it's echoey as hell, so not ideal for speaker design. That's done all in the studio in Mark's room, which is the most dead out of all of them. The RT60 of that room is about 0.1 seconds, so it's a pretty dead room.
What was that?
The RT60, so that's the time in which a signal takes to drop down by 60 decibels, I think, if I've remembered that correctly.
So why is that so important?
It basically just means how dead your room is. So in here, the RT60 will be probably half a second because it's a more live environment. There's more reflective surfaces. That it's not actually an important measurement, really. I don't think
it's an important measurement if you're designing concert halls.
Yeah,
because
for
that's
studios.
what the measurement was created for.
Yeah.
In small rooms, which is any studio, apart from the live room at Abbey Road Studio 1 or something like that, but for in 99% of control rooms it's a completely useless measurement and really inaccurate. So it's designed for acousticians building concert halls and or trying to get the reverb time down in stadiums or gymnasiums or kind of big rooms like that.
Well, there's some really sort of interesting research, just going on a tangent a little bit here.
Go for it.
About how music evolved and developed based on the spaces in which it was being performed.
Yes.
And that is how we have now come to a point where we can listen to music which is more rhythmically and harmonically complex. Whereas if you go back, say, 500 years, and you're sitting in a big cavernous church or cathedral listening to some music, or maybe even hearing some rustling in your right ear. Have you finished your pack of Watsits yet?
I've finished my screwing. I'm just going to interrupt you just for 2 seconds because I need to carry on screwing this in a minute. This is the NC100 HF. So this is the tiny little 100 watt amplifier that's driving the tweeter, and I'm going to bolt it into the case. So you may continue.
There we go.
Well, I was kind of finished really. I was just sort of saying that, as spaces changed when we were consuming or listening to music, we could add more to the spectrum, whether it be harmonically or rhythmically. Because can you imagine some crazy funk band playing in a cathedral? You'd hear everything bouncing back at you all the time, and you wouldn't know where you were.
It's interesting actually. So Mark and I used to do the tour management and the sound for a couple of bands back before the pandemic, and one of them, we did a lot of gigs in churches. It wasn't like a religious band or anything. It just happened to be that a lot of the places that the shows were in churches. It wasn't actually so hard to get the sound under control. After a couple of gigs where I'd really kind of nailed the kind of sound management.
Yeah.
It wasn't so bad. It didn't end up being too washy or reverby or anything, because you could, especially with mic placement, getting it as close as possible to get the sound of the instrument rather than the room made a huge difference.
Yeah.
And just, general kind of tuning the sound system to the space and removing any major issue kind of frequencies and stuff really made a big difference.
That's another big difference, going back to the Americanisms again, talking about churches between the UK and America, isn't it? Or Europe as a whole and America, but probably particularly the UK. In a church in the UK is some ancient stone, freezing cold, drafty, cobweb infested building with
crusty old Doris. 4
people turning up at 10 o'clock on a Sunday morning, and some old woman called Mavis who can barely play the first verse of Amazing Grace on an out of tune keyboard instrument of some description before having a stroke. Whereas in America, a church the churches now, they're like venues. They're incredible. They're acoustically treated. They've got the most up-to-date, top-spec AV installations with multicam, live streaming, fantastic PAs, incredible bands full of incredible musicians. It's a completely...
there are whole YouTube channels now dedicated to what do they call worship music, but people actually talking about what the best... when I've been looking
church
for
tech and stuff like that,
in monitoring systems and stuff like that, the first things that always
it's
show
all on
up
there.
it's all worship leaders and things like that.
It's incredible.
What setup they've got.
It's true. I mean, so there's a chap that follows our YouTube channel who I'm good friends with called Oscar. He does the AV within a church in Texas, and he's always sending me pictures of the tech that they're acquiring, and I'm just like, I'm so jealous. This is an amazing system. Like, they've got some real top-notch stuff, lots of kit like this as well, Blackmagic stuff, and it's very impressive the amount of effort that goes into kitting out churches in the US.
But I guess you've got to think about the function of those venues that, say, would have been being built, especially cathedrals, things like that. It was about the opulence of the building, wasn't it? It was about sort of saying, this is a big building because we're showing how much we love God, or or we're showing the peasants how important this building is and how small they are, whatever your belief is in that. So then obviously you've got sound in a massive reverberant building. So, that's why you have the devil's interval. Because if you play the devil's interval in a massive building like that on an organ, I don't know if you've ever heard an organ incredible. Being played. Yeah. I mean, I was in Cambridge recently and there was, I went to the top of one of the cathedrals, but there was a guy playing the organ down the bottom. And even for me, I was listening to, he was practicing the, the Wedding March or something?
Oh, yeah.
I don't know what the actual name of the Wedding March is. I'm sure some of the comments can educate me, as I feel like I'm being educated for the whole of this evening.
If Oliver's watching, he'll know the answer to all these churchy type questions.
Like the dissonance, the feeling of dissonance in that room compared to when I've heard it in other rooms before, because the clashing of notes bouncing off of walls was just like, it was not pleasant.
Yeah. So the American churches have kind of brought that into the 21st century. Really, I mean, there's a lot to be said for obviously hearing an organ in a cathedral, but a lot of them are in a state of disrepair. And if you get called to do a tech job at a church in America, you're going to probably be working with some sort of fibre optic cable and stuff like that. Whereas if you get called to do that in the UK, you're probably going to be gaffer taping up some bellows or something like that. It's a completely different thing, or plugging Mavis into the defibrillator.
There was a question from Supernova1 who said, do the amps have any audible hiss from the tweeter when on? So this is an issue with some Class D amps, and in fact it was originally with these Hypex amplifiers when we started using them. However, we modify these amplifiers with the permission of Hypex. They have confirmed that we can do it, and they've said it's all safe. There are some, we won't tell you what they are, but there are some modifications which are done to the circuitry on the FA253. Again, all approved by Hypex. It's safe, and that basically... NC252. Which is the individual woofer and mid module that we use, and that basically completely removed the hiss, didn't it? It dropped the noise by a huge amount.
We were getting a little bit of hiss from the mid-range driver. Again, once you got further than a metre away, you couldn't hear it, but we know some people are using them in the very near field. So that became an issue that we wanted to fix, and we did fix it. It's basically down to the sensitivity of the driver, rather than anything the amplifier is doing, because the Hypex NCore modules are very well known for being extremely quiet in operation. And when we were Hypexing up Jez's K100s in the week, it wasn't an issue at all. So if we did a active Hypex based solution for those, then we wouldn't need to do the modification that we need to do with the Bleesma mid. The tweeter, there's a tiny, on the Beryllium version, there's a tiny bit of hiss coming out of it if you put your ear
you can't hear it from a sitting listening position. It's too quiet now, which is good. So we're really happy with that. Did you want to say something, Sam? You were looking at me as though you were about to
I was just
exclaim.
Looking at your digital aura. But no, it's,
is that legal?
Just my namesake Peter Samuelson brought things full circle for us by saying that they also didn't have any amplification in those buildings, so they needed those buildings.
Exactly.
Which takes us to
Mark
and the amplification.
And if we look, he's just putting the screws in.
So we've just done a very concise short history of amplification.
There you go, there's music in 3 minutes.
Beautiful.
The entire history of music. So Mark, what are you doing right now?
So I have screwed in the NC252, which is the main power supply and dual 250 watt amplification doo-doo. I've also screwed in the tweeter, which I showed you is the tiny little 100 watt module, and I've now screwed in the DSP, which you missed. So it's quite tricky to get in because there's sticky out bits on the XLRs that are wider than the hole, so it's a bit of a wiggle to get it in there. But once you have got it in there, it's in there. So both boards, so there's two boards, there's two parts to the DSP. There's the main bit, which is at the top. I should probably show you on that camera, shouldn't I?
Yeah.
There's the main bit, which is at the top there, and then there's the digital input side, which is underneath there. So those two boards are sandwiched together, and then they're screwed in using screws. Your standard sort of C-type
that's a loud helicopter.
chassis mount screws in there. The Canford have just shout out to Canford again. They've done an exceptional job making these. This is not an easy cutout for anyone. As you can see, there's a lot going on there, and everything's got to be precisely aligned. So not only the holes for the sockets, and your RCA and your digital inputs there, optical input. There's a USB input, which is very difficult to do a cutout for. There's an LED coming through each of those holes, so they've got to be perfectly aligned.
Just point into the camera so we can actually see,
yeah, so the holes for the LEDs have got to be perfectly aligned as well. Hypex do provide 3D CAD plans for that, but there's actually a few holes missing, isn't there?
Yes.
As we found out. So yeah, Canford have done an exceptional job of the metalwork for these. As you can see, everything's perfectly aligned and perfectly spaced, and they've done a wonderful job. So flipping over on the inside, we now have the mains that I wired earlier, the NL8, which will give us our speaker outputs. We've got the main amp modules and power supply there, the 100 watt tweeter module, and the DSP modules there. So what I'm now going to do is put the final socket in, which is this one here. That's going in there. That's a 5-pin XLR connector which connects to the screen on the Mum 8, so that gives power and data to the screen. So he just pops in like that, and then screw him in from the other side.
No one on the stream can see the behind the scenes of me running up and down the workshop to try and operate a camera and a video switcher at once.
Just as well.
It's always good fun.
You know, you keep giving shout outs to various people and stuff, but actually you guys are the ones that brought these disparate elements together to create such a, you know, amazing product, essentially. I mean, we were using it this afternoon, or rather I was using it this afternoon.
Yeah, so Sam popped in just to listen to some mixes, didn't you?
Yeah, it was heartbreaking. Essentially, it was one of the worst experiences of my life. I was like, "Oh, I'm there, I've done it. You know, I've got these right." And then we sat down, didn't we, Mark, James?
We did.
Sam, can you hear the phasing there in the string quartet? Sam, can you? Maybe you should have thought about putting a gate on the kick drum. Can you not hear all that crap? It's like, yeah, I can now. Obviously, thank you. So it's just very interesting to me how you can get a speaker that's just so clear and transparent.
Yeah, it has been eye-opening for us working on different bits of music and hearing what we can really hear when you dive into the details, and also for other people that have come in, not necessarily to buy speakers, but have come in to listen to their masters or whatever it might be, and heard things that they've not heard in their recordings before.
But even if you look at the process from these this current and then the previous live stream, discussing even just how you put the whole thing together.
Yeah, so we spent, it was probably about 6 or 7 months developing the entire thing, for all its various iterations it's had. And we're happy with where it is now, and obviously now there aren't really any changes to make because it's a speaker, and then you just replicate those processes each time you want to build one.
How many times has Mark done this process now, and it's not been the one? You know, how many times have you had to build an amp?
Oh, lots.
I mean, as with the cabinets, as with everything, there have been many prototypes and things that don't work, and we've blown up an amp, we've done all sorts.
Yeah, and you have to, the most important bit really is the testing process as well. So like I was talking about reliability earlier on, these are little box connectors which connect all the modules together. So that makes it incredibly easy for me, thank you Hypex, because I just plug stuff together and then they all kind of work. But what we found with these is, particularly with the ones that connect to if you just switch to that camera again, can you see that?
You'll have to go down a long way. Down.
Okay, let's go back to this one then.
Okay.
The box connectors, over time, do that. So then you lose your
signal
module, or so it's just little things like that. So what I now do is, once I've plugged all these in, which I've done, is I just hot glue them in, and then that means that doesn't happen anymore. So it's kind of little iterations like that all add up. Where the cables are routed, so is the fragile line level signals are kept away from the power supply, which is why the modules are wired this way up. So the more sensitive you get in electronics, the more further they are from where the mains comes in and the power supply, and just things like that really. Working on the ventilation and making sure that the amps run cool, that they don't sort of, even if they're, you know, run full pelt for 15 hours, they're not, you're not getting error messages. I don't think we've ever managed to get an error message come up on the screen.
So on the front of our speakers, there is an OLED display which shows you when it's idling, it shows you the logo, but it will also show you the preset you've selected. It will show you what input you're on and the internal amp volume. But if there is a problem, like you overheat the amp, it will say amp too hot, blah, blah, blah. We've really tried. I mean, I've been running a pair of my mates full pelt for about 8 hours at one point, and I cannot get them to overheat. So the ventilation, I think we're happy with. I've never seen the overheating sign, and it's normally pretty toasty in Mark's room as well. So, you know, I think it's pretty safe. What you did?
I think you should just throw in a bit of flop cam.
Do you know what? I was just thinking that. He's fully upside down.
Particularly cute in his box at the moment.
He's proper floppered.
Oh, I can't see. I haven't got a monitor today.
Sad.
So I think obviously cutting whenever you're doing something of particular interest, but I think we were talking earlier about how this is, for a little while anyway, going to be the last sort of live stream where we're looking behind the scenes at this particular process.
Sure.
So I'd just be kind of interested from my perspective to kind of understand why. And I know you've touched on it before, but especially like for you, James, why do we need these monitors? I know why I need them, but what pushed you to do it?
Okay, so for anyone that hasn't been following along, the reason we are making these monitors, or the reason we started this whole monitor journey is Mark and I were really interested in Dolby Atmos, and we wanted to get into it because we thought the concept was fantastic. We did some testing using our SCM200s as left and right main monitors, and then just obviously over the last few years of doing YouTube, we've been sent quite a few speakers, so we have a big collection of two-way monitors. They never get used, they're just sitting here, so we decided to plumb them in as surrounds and highs for a makeshift Dolby Atmos system, and we were really blown away with what we were hearing. Even considering some of these speakers were like £200 a pair or whatever, just the concept of having the sound the whole way around us really blew us away. And the way that it's mixed as well, it just ended up, everything sounded better in every possible way.
But what were you using? You were using like, you had some ATCs.
Yeah, ATC mains. And then it was, so we had some Focal Alpha Evo 65s somewhere within the circle. There was Adam A7Vs. Yeah. There was Adam T8Vs. It wasn't exactly a matched system. It was just anything we've been sent for review, which was a speaker. We put it in the thing just to try it because that was all we had. And yeah, so basically we loved it so much we thought, right, we really want to get into this. So we looked at the pricing for an ATC system, and it ended up costing, depending on configuration between small and big speakers, somewhere between about 150 to 200 grand. And that was money that we and most people don't have.
Yeah.
And so it inspired us just to do it ourselves, because that's the way that we've always done it. If there's something that we can't afford, just do it yourself. I know it sounds like a big jump, just do it yourself. Obviously there was a hell of a lot of thought that went into it before we even spent the first penny. Is it worth trying?
Like, were you just looking at each other and just went, yeah,
when we were listening?
No, did you just literally go, right, we love Atmos, 150, 200 grand, let's do it ourselves? Or did one of you turn up one day and say, do you know what, I think we should?
I think it was a bit of a long burn process thinking of solutions. It was like, could we do this with a slightly cheaper system? Would we be happy with a cheaper system?
Well, a lot of it was down to another two factors as well, one of which was me having a massive midlife crisis and wanting to get my teeth into something. And The other thing was our audience. Lots of our audience were asking us if we'd ever consider making a studio monitor.
Sure.
And we hadn't, because we thought, everyone will want a 500 quid pair of monitors, and there's no way we can compete with sort of, China on that. But a lot of it, a lot of the inspiration for it came from the audience as well.
I think this would be a good point to segue just into the pricing of the speakers, because there have been some questions about that in the comments. So can't remember who it was, my apologies, it was quite a while back, but someone said, have we thought of sending them to Gear for Music to get them to sell them for us? So as a whole concept, the base model Mum 8 costs round about £5,000, rounded up, 4,995, £5,000. The reason it costs £5,000 is because that is the price that we have put on it as a direct sales model. So for those that don't know, when you go to buy a product, not only speakers, but any product, pretty much in any industry, not only audio, you have distribution and retail. So those are the ones that send it out to the shops and sell it to you on, eBay, or not eBay, Amazon, that kind of thing. And so all of those obviously add their own cut to the price. So a pair of speakers that would cost £5,000 if you bought them straight from the manufacturer could end up costing you £10,000 or even £12,000 if these later stages of selling add on their margin, which of course is going to happen because these people have to earn a living. So we thought, as is typical present day production, we can do that, and basically decided to sell direct for two reasons. One is because it saves the money for the customer. It means that the price that they pay is literally half of what it should be if you bought it through a shop. It doesn't affect us. We earn the same money as we would if we did it through distribution, because that would be a margin that goes on top of the manufacturer's profit. So it makes no difference to us whatsoever if we distribute through someone else or through ourselves. So the most logical option was to do it ourselves. And it has been a thing that a few people have sent a message like, how can you compare these speakers to speakers which are costing twice the amount of money? Because that's essentially what they should cost if they were put through.
That's the message you're trying to get out, isn't it?
Exactly.
You felt, correct me if I'm wrong, but it sounds like you felt it was quite prohibitive getting into the Atmos speaker game due to the price.
Yes.
And then you've reflected upon that, it sounds to me, and thought, well, having high-end speakers is also quite prohibitive for the vast majority of people when it comes to how much they cost.
Exactly.
So what can we do?
Exactly. It's always something we look at. It's like, right, how can we change this? Because we like doing things differently. Hence all the silly videos and stuff that we've done. We don't want to be a boring YouTube channel. And it's the same in speakers. We want to try and do it differently. We want to open up new avenues that other people don't do. Off the top of my head, I can only think of one other company that does direct sales within speakers, but most of them tend to go through retail and distribution.
In pro audio, I don't think there is one. There's
Bucart
that are doing it in hi-fi world, and very well.
And it's interesting, really, to think why that wouldn't be happening. I know it takes more manpower to kind of...
Well, someone said here it's also about marketing.
Yes.
Yes. But that's a contentious subject, isn't it? That I'm sure you would.
Well, that's what we looked at, what a lot of the distributors are doing for marketing, and a lot of the retailers, and what benefit that would bring to us. And the answer was, in most cases, fuck all. They're not doing anything at all. There are distributors that are exceptions, like Paul from Emerging, who we know very well, who's doing he works damn hard to sell his products and get it out in the world. And there are an awful lot of distributors that aren't doing that at all. They're literally box shifting. And that, unfortunately, is most of them, or most of the ones that we contacted. And even when you look at foreign territories, if we were to try and get our speakers into Sweetwater, you could say, oh, that's great, you get your product on Sweetwater, brilliant. Well, if you look at the studio monitor category on Sweetwater, it's going to take you an hour and a half just to go through it all. It's absolutely insane. So how do we make our monitors stand out from the crowd? And one of the ways we can do that ourselves is through pricing. And every professional that came to Gearfest that knows about speakers and knows how they sound and know what a monitor costs from the retailers that came in to the other manufacturers that came in to Claudio, Dr. Mix. We asked all of them, okay, the price wasn't up anywhere, was it? We said, we asked all of them, how much is, they asked us what's the price and how much is it? So we fired it back and said, well, you tell us how much is it? And every single person said 12 grand a pair. And it was a definitive, there wasn't one that said 10 and one that said 13. Everyone that works in that environment, be it a retailer or another manufacturer, said 12 grand a pair.
So that's what they should cost.
Yeah,
going through the regular sales routes.
That's what they would be if we went through a retailer. But if we put them into Sweetwater, then for a start they're going to get lost in the noise, and they're not going to be 5 grand. They're going to be 12 grand. So it's much harder to compete. And if someone in LA wants to hear them, they've got to fly to Sweetwater. You know, America's a huge country.
So there was a question that came in a second ago regarding tax and VAT. So obviously some companies add or they don't negate the input. They don't negate the cost of import tax. So when you import any product into your country, you have to pay tax on it. The way that we do it is because we're VAT registered in the UK, we take off the tax of a pair of mummates. So they're $4,995 when you buy them up front. If you buy them in the UK, you just pay that up front. That's everything. If you buy them outside of the UK, 20% is taken off. So it's £4,100, give or take. And then they're shipped. And then when the speakers enter your country, you pay import duty on the remaining 20%. And then everyone pays the same amount, assuming a 20% tax rate, give or take a couple of pounds. So that's the way that we've done it, because it then means that, you know, people buying abroad aren't stung by high rates of duty when the speakers are imported. So there are loads of things that we're trying to do to make it easier for people to do it, basically, to get into the high-end monitoring world, because we think we've got something special. Everyone that's heard them has thought we've got something special, and we want to make it possible for as many people as possible to get in on that.
And the thing is as well, I know it's a bit of a cliche, but it's also, you're supporting a genuine business where everything is coming in and out of this room.
Yes. Made
with genuine love and care, as per Mark's midlife crisis.
I don't know
long may it continue.
Yes, talking of love and care.
So there were a few interesting comments from people that didn't realise that this wasn't on this live stream, but in general, that people that didn't realise they're all built here. So they thought the speakers just turn up and someone else has done it, but no, every single pair is built in this very room.
So I've done some stuff since I was last on camera.
So
all the modules were in last time we looked. Now they're all wired up and it's a bit of a spaghetti mess, but let me explain what's going on. So we've got the ribbon cables going from the DSP to the amplifier modules, which are carrying signal and also information back to the DSP. So there's heat sensors in the amplifiers that are conveying their operating temperature back to the DSP, and then the DSP is making sure that they're all right and they're perfectly comfortable. So once I've got everything wired up, I'm then going to tidy all this up and cable tie it down and make sure it's good and solid and robust.
It doesn't stay looking like that.
It doesn't
as it goes
stay looking
into
like
the box.
this. You can. I don't know if you can see on that camera, but
hang on, I'm going to go play camera games again.
Go and play camera games again. You probably don't need to, but if you want to, you can. So basically, I've hot glued those box connectors in, so now they're not going anywhere. And yes, that could be an issue in future if you need to replace a module because they're hot glued in, but it isn't. If you get a problem with an amp module, we'll just send you a whole new one of these. We don't expect a customer to get in there and start unplugging things and unscrewing modules. We will just send you a whole replacement unit. I've now got crimp connectors on all the speaker outputs, so we've got these, I've cut these down to size, to the right size to reach the connectors. We've got crimp connectors on the tweeter outputs and crimp connectors on the bass and the mid-range outputs as well.
Lovely.
Now you can go back to your desk before Sam breaks something.
Sam has decided to sit in my seat and was looking at all the buttons and mouthing at me, which button do I press? And I was like,
none of them?
All of them. Push all the buttons. I mean, we've got a a new fancy feature, which I've just learned how to do, which is picturing picture. How exciting.
Picture in picture.
So right now there's me, Mark, and the cat. The cat is fully floppered.
What another thing I did forget to mention as well is that these crimp connectors, I forgot to twist. I normally twist the cables in the drill. I forgot to do that, so I'm doing that by hand here. These crimp connectors are also soldered, just for extra reliability. And then what I'm going to do is, before they go onto the NL8, I'm going to pop a bit of heat shrink over each one like that and shrink that on. So they're crimped and soldered and heat shrinked as well, just for extra durability.
So there's a question here about the Mum 6. I've seen a couple of people mentioning this, but CNN Productions said, when are the PDP two-way speakers coming out and will they have an external amp? So in our original chats about it, we were thinking of using the same amplifier that the Mum 8 uses, that rack mountable, that's the cat, hold on, rack mountable amp. I pushed the wrong button.
Oh, look at him.
And basically, so we've done lots of experimentation, lots of thinking, and I think we're going to go with the idea that the amp will be a plate amp within the back of the speaker. So again, it will be an OEM module Hypex system. Why are you waving at me?
Sam, darling, could you just pass me that reel of stuff on the top there, please? Because once again, I'm cabled in and rather buggered if I need to move. Just the top one would be absolutely spiffing.
So
Thank you ever so much indeed.
The Mum 8 monitor, the Mum 6 near-field two-way monitor, we're hoping around Christmas time might be released, but there are a few more things to just figure out, so we won't put a kind of firm time stamp on it just yet. The sound of them, I'm quite happy with. I know Mark has a few things he just wants to look at, just kind of fine details really. And I'm quite excited because right now they're voiced very similarly to the Mum 8, the three-way monitor. So switching between them, there's no kind of tonality difference. They're voiced very similarly. Obviously, you lose a tiny bit of mid detail because you're not having a mid driver there, which obviously makes a big difference, and that's where the extra cost of a Mum 8 comes in. But the Mum 6 will stand up very well against any other two-way monitor. Pricing, again, I don't think we're 100% set on that, so I don't want to say anything. Mark's looking at me.
What's very exciting about the 6 as well is because we haven't rushed it and we've taken our time with it. So we wanted to have the 6 ready for kind of July, didn't we, for Gearfest, and it wasn't. So we haven't rushed it. We've taken our time. And what's really exciting about it now is that it is genuinely upgradable from a two-way to a three-way, which is very exciting.
Yes, so I don't have I might have the picture somewhere from last week.
Yeah, we covered it last week.
Yeah, so the idea is basically that you start off with a two-way monitor that's really loud.
Yeah, just mute me.
You start off with a two-way monitor and you can either add a bass extender as one option of expansion, so essentially like a sub but not quite. And you can then also, as another option, take the 6.5-inch mid driver out, replace it with a Bleesma mid, which is the same as what's found in the Mum 8, using an adapter ring that we will make, and basically caught that cough just in time. And basically you'll be able to turn it into a three-way monitor. So it will be bigger than a Mum 8 because it will be basically a floor stander bass extension unit, but the idea is there that it will be a truly modular speaker. You can add in a mid driver, turn it into a three-way if you want to.
Well, it's also pretty good if you want to build an Atmos system.
It is, yeah. So we've already got a customer up in Scotland who has ordered himself some Mum 6s. As I said, they're not publicly available, but we're looking to, get some testers out there. So there are lots of exciting things happening in PDP world at the moment, including lots of heat gunning over there in Mark World.
Oh,
looks like he's enjoying himself. Yeah. So Manny said, I'd like to see a sub line. So these are some things we're working on. So we're going to have the Mum 6, the Mum 8. We are working on a Mum 10 with a 10-inch driver. What the hell are you doing?
Is this part of the process? Is this?
Yeah, you have to go. Somebody just went in my throat.
Please don't die.
I'm not sure what it was.
I kind of need you to do the amps.
Look at that fluffy boy out there.
Anyway, right. Let me just carry on talking. So the Mum 8. Mum 6, Mum 8 and Mum 10 with a 10-inch driver. So we haven't even done first prototypes of the 10 yet, but we have the driver on the way. That will be arriving very soon, maybe next week, not sure yet, but that'll be arriving soon. And then obviously sub lines to go with that, so a sub 6, sub 8, sub 10, as well as a potential collaboration, as Mark said, with Care Acoustic to make a big large format monitor for Studio World. This is something we're only talking about at the moment, but we are all very, very excited for that, so it will happen next year. It will happen at some point, because there'll be a lot of R&D that has to go into that one to make it as sexy as possible. Yes. Speakers.
Well, I can categorically say that these speakers will improve your mixes 100%.
So Sam is not paid, endorsed, anything. He's just here for a chat.
I'm literally saying that because of what I've been experiencing up to about 2 hours ago in the studio, in the unit just on the other side of this car park.
Yep.
It's you will hate everything that you have mixed before. That is something you will have to deal with, but the trade-off is that everything you mix thereafter will sound 100 times better.
Exactly.
And if there was any reason other than that, I mean, I can't think of any other reason why you would need to get a pair of that is the why for me.
They're basically, for me, and again, this is from an unbiased point of view, I'm not trying to sell speakers, this is me just saying what I hear. The Bleesma Mid in particular reveals a lot of details that I hadn't heard on other mid drivers. Even the ATC one. Now, the Volt mid driver is very good. When we had the K100 speakers in a couple of days ago, they are fantastic mid drivers. You know, they do reveal a lot of detail. Us, personally, we preferred the Bleesmas, and there were various reasons why we went for the Bleesmas as well, including lead times, which I think Volt have sorted out now anyway. But they're just fantastic drivers, and especially with the Purify woofer, it's the cleanest bass driver I've ever heard.
Well,
and I think Mark agrees.
I like to think sort of, I don't want to sound too egotistical, but I like to think my ears are pretty good when it comes to listening and mixing. But I mean, today we were listening to a vocal within the mix, and we were EQing the reverb, messing with the tail, and the clarity was just unbelievable. All the detail that you could hear.
Yeah, it won't hide anything.
Yeah, it was. I mean, it blows my mind every single time that I use them, but it also makes everything else I do not using those speakers a complete and utter waste of time, essentially.
So there's a comment here from Hobbs Mirka asking if there's any updates on the possibility of sending a pair to Erin for measurements or testing. Oh, Mark's looking at me.
Who's Erin?
Erin's Audio Corner.
Erin's Audio Corner is a YouTube channel who has a pretty good measurement rig over in the United States.
To my mind, no. There is no merit in that at all, because Erin's very good at what he does, but his audience aren't our users at all. And all I've had a very nice conversation over email with Erin, and every conversation I've had with a lot of not just Erin's audience, but a lot of audience for that type of content / review has been nothing but toxic.
Yeah.
So I have a bit of an issue. I would love to Audio Science Review. I'd love to send a pair to, I can't remember the guy's name.
Amir.
Yeah, Amir at Audio Science Review. If he didn't have a forum.
Yes, so there was a big, we discussed this ages ago, but when we first put out the very first kind of we made a speaker thing last year, exactly a year ago, it was October, with our original MDF prototypes, we got absolutely destroyed on Audio Science Review for no real reason, basically.
Well, yeah, not destroyed. I mean, every point that was put across was basically crap. And based on just opinionated people who do nothing other than stare at data sheets all day, and that is not our customer base at all. The people that buy the Mum 8 monitors, they don't give a shit what they look like on paper. All they care about is how their mixes translate, how it can up the quality of their work, and the percentage of revisions they get. And I said in one of our videos, that's the only measurement we care about, is the percentage of revisions. And we've learned this week in sort of tuning jazzes as well that whilst you can aim for flat, flat is not good. Yeah,
I mean, it's true. I mean, so just to clarify, we're not putting all forum users into one bucket.
No. But there are that kind of forum just breeds toxicity.
Well, for example, like that screenshot that I
like
showed
the
you
comment
earlier.
And I don't care about that, but I don't care about it, and it's going to cost us a fortune to send a pair of speakers to Amir, and that's money, and that's going to put the price of the speakers up, and our end user doesn't care what Amir says, because the people that generally frequent those forums they're not interested in buying a pair of speakers, they're not interested in producing music, they're not interested in what our core audience are interested in. They're just interested in trying to find an outlet for their hatred and shut up. But yeah, I'm not interested in that. I'm not saying I'm not interested in measurements. Measurements are very important, and obviously, as well as listening tests, we've done measurements. But what I am saying is that there are a lot of people out there that I don't want to be associated with at all in any way, really. So in terms of reviews, we will be sending a pair to Sound on Sound and Phil.
Yeah, that's already being organised right now.
We'll measure them, and that's fine. But Sound on Sound has a very healthy forum that is full of helpful people that love helping other people and discussing things. And if there's issues, then they discuss them, and it's all done very nicely.
So there's an interesting point that's just come up from Ferocious Mullet, who I think is Gareth. Yeah,
he was here
it's
yesterday.
Gareth, who was here yesterday listening to some Mullets. ATC measures poorly, and it's true.
Yeah.
On some of their, I can't remember the smaller speakers, but on the bigger speakers in particular, the measurements are not flat.
Well, they don't publish. You won't find a single graph of anything.
I mean, user carried out.
Yeah, but I mean,
independent.
you won't find a single graph of anything on their website. You'll just find a list of specifications and frequency response from 60 hertz to whatever flat with it plus minus 3 dB is all you'll get. And the same with PMC and the same with most. It's because people just don't. People that are working in music and are our intended customer just don't care. They care because it's a very subjective thing as well as a very technical thing. So we can use measurements to find out if there's any box resonances or all the things that you have to do when you're building a speaker. But our end users just don't care. And when I'm mastering on them, I don't care anymore because we've been through that and we've done it. And
so obviously there's a comment here from Brian DeMaio, who I know does care about measurements, and that's fair enough. And he says, I like seeing measurements as a means of comparison to things I do know. Now, there's a really interesting case here in the Neumann KH310s, which most of our viewers know that Mark and I are not fans of. And technically, the KH310s measure quite well. However, we've been and heard KH310s in a very expensive studio. We've heard a KH310 Atmos system. I think it was 420s in the mains, but 310s everywhere else. And they just sound compressed and flat and lifeless. And if I remember correctly, I think Gareth said this yesterday when he came in as well about the KH310s. They hold back a lot of dynamic range. They're quite overcompressed.
Well, you feel like you have to work harder.
Yes, it's not only working harder, but you can't tell what you're doing.
Yeah.
But that's what I mean. As in, if you're mixing something, you feel like you have to do something and work harder to make it sound good.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
Exactly. So, I mean, technically, as I said, the KH310s measure decently. They're fine on paper, but when you listen to them, there is stuff that they are holding back. And when you're mixing, it's not so evident what you're doing with a compressor, for example, because of that natural compression of that speaker. Now, people that use them and people that have only used them might say differently. They might say that it doesn't hide anything. But when you've heard a speaker that doesn't hold back, that has dynamic range, it's clearly evident.
You can work faster.
Yes. So I'm not by any means saying that Brian or any of our users don't know what they're talking about, because that would be wrong. They do know what they're talking about. But there are certain things that, you know, don't necessarily reflect what's on the paper.
Yeah, and I'm not saying we're not going to publish measurements, but what I don't want to do is I don't want to publish our measurements. I want to publish the measurements taken by a third-party organisation that are qualified in measuring the performance of a speaker cabinet. And, you know, that will likely be a university of something or other. At the moment, we're struggling to find the right one.
Well, yeah, so that's something we've been looking at, is anechoic chambers. Many of them don't actually stretch much lower than about 100 hertz, do they?
I think the largest in the UK is the University of Southampton, and I think that's flat down to about 80. I mean, the room's going to have far more of an effect anyway.
Sure.
So it doesn't really
because
matter.
In order to get a flat response in an anechoic room, you need something. I think it was like an 84-foot room or something like that. Huge lengths. Or it might have even been 84 meters. Either way, absolutely huge. We ain't going to fit one in here. And there aren't many around the UK either. I know that's where clipple measurements come in, because they essentially remove the room by doing lots of free field and near field measurements. There are various ways to do this kind of thing. But yeah, we're experimenting all the time.
Yeah, we're not shying away from measurements and presenting measurements, but we want them presented in the right way and not by us, by, you know, a qualified body. And then when they go out for review to various places like Sound on Sound, then, you know, Phil will take some measurements, and that won't be done in an anechoic chamber. That will be done in his listening room, and it will be different. Because
so he uses free field and near field measurements.
Yeah, so the room will have an effect on the measurements, and he says that in the review, and, you know, that's absolutely fine. But particularly Audio Science Review and Erin's Audio Corner are of no benefit to our core customer.
So Brian DeMaio said it's hard to commit without hearing them, and I totally understand that.
Yeah, exactly.
That is a very valid point. We are obviously a new guy in the manufacturing world, speaker manufacturers. We only released these speakers at the start of the year, and only did like a public launch back in July. So we're still new. As we grow, there are more things that will become possible. We'll be able to, you know, get more demo pairs out into the world around the US and wherever else people want to hear them. We have plans for, you know, a demo pair system that could travel around where necessary. Just at the moment, the budget doesn't quite reach that far, because obviously we're trying to keep things within our own reach and under control.
See here, I was just making a cake whilst doing this, and dropped the tin.
May Smets said, if you want to hear everything, would the Beryllium tweeter add details? Absolutely. So there were a couple of comments that said, can you mix the Beryllium and Silk mid and tweeter? This is something we're planning on testing, but we haven't yet done it because we've just been too busy working with all Silk or all Beryllium orders. It is something we're going to test. But so to cover what the sounds actually are, the Silk drivers show you a fantastic amount of detail. I mean, enough for us to move our SCM 200s out of Mark's mastering room last year and into my room as, well, now dead monitors. Because the amps broke down in February and we've not fixed them yet.
James's room where monitors go to die.
Literally a monitor graveyard.
Monitor graveyard.
I've also got some Mum 6s with no amps as well, so it seems to be a room just filled with speakers with no amps. But yeah, so we moved the SCM 200s out of Mark's mastering room into my room, and Mark was using the Bleesma Silk mid and tweeter in our original prototype speakers back in the day, and yeah, they show you a hell of a lot of detail. Some people say that the Silks are actually a little more harsh than the Berylliums. I mean, I don't personally hear that, but again, personal taste can be very much a thing.
You keep using that harsh word. There's nothing harsh about any Bleesma driver. Some people think the silks sound a little bit brighter.
Yes,
but there's
brighter.
No. There's if what's going into them is harsh, then they will portray harshness. But there's no way you can, on well-recorded, mixed and mastered material, they're not going to add any harshness to anything.
But just to come back to that point, so the berylliums basically add more detail. They have a better transient response, and just generally reveal a hell of a lot more. Having said that, even the guys that have got the silk mum-8s around the world, so we've got over 30 pairs, I think it is at this point, around the world, all of them, bar none, have said that they're hearing more details than they were on their previous speakers. Now, we've got users that have come from KH310s. That's actually, I think, the biggest proportion of our audience have come from KH310s. And we've got guys that have come from SEM45s, PMC62s, 82s, basically all of the speakers around the pricing point, excluding the 310s, all of the speakers around the pricing point that we said that these would be if they went through the regular selling channels. So it's good to know that the guys who use it, guys and girls around the world that are using them, are hearing things that they're happy with, and we're getting some really nice feedback. How's it going over there, Mark?
Yeah, I'm just doing the last little fiddly bit of soldering, which is the XLR connector for the screen, and then I'll show you something.
Yeah,
so
and we do understand that there are people that just will not buy without seeing measurements because they can't hear them, because there aren't a pair close to them, or they're not available. We understand that. You should, if you're buying a pair of speakers, measurements shouldn't come into it. Do not buy a pair of speakers based on measurements. Buy a pair of speakers based on hearing them and liking them, and being able to work with them. So that's what I was about to say. So because we don't have retail and distribution around the world, obviously we don't have shops that are selling the mum-8s. However, we have set up a network of all of the studios that own them currently, and I'm working on some future deals with people as well. Basically, you can go to any of the studios that own them currently for listening sessions, and then we support the owners of those studios as well if the order goes through. That's our way of getting them out around the world, albeit a little slower than if we went through retail and distribution, but the way that we want to do it for now. And it still means that people can hear the speakers in various different places. So right now we've got speakers in Los Angeles. Oh.
Just mute me for a sec.
Okay, yeah. We've got speakers in Los Angeles, not quite Los Angeles, Roseville, which is just to the north, I think, of Los Angeles. We've got Minnesota, Wisconsin. There's some in Nova Scotia, in Canada. We have 2 pairs in Italy, 3 pairs in Germany. Where else? Australia, New Zealand, Slovenia, Poland. Who else is on the board?
Holland,
Hungary.
A few pairs in Holland.
Yeah, Holland, Hungary, Belgium. So there's quite a few places around the world already that are using mum-8s, and obviously this is increasing over time as more people buy them. It's been interesting, the number of people that have come over from Germany, and specifically Germany, to come and listen to the speakers. So we had a guy come over on Thursday who flew over just to listen to the mum-8s. Which was quite fun, and it's happened quite a few times, hasn't it?
There's another one on Tuesday.
There's another one on Tuesday. A guy coming over from Berlin, I think.
Well, you're close enough to London as well.
Exactly. I mean, you technically can fly here for not much money if you use something like Ryanair. It's maybe 20 quid away. I don't know, 20 quid a direction.
And then you can go and see Big Ben.
Exactly.
Good point. Right, I'm nearly there now. So, last bit of heat shrink. Oops.
Let's turn that down. Deafening. I'm just reading the comments.
Right, so this is probably a really stupid idea for a live stream, wasn't it? Because this has been
just
so
sat
fiddly. I've just sat here doing stuff, concentrating and trying not to get it wrong, so I don't have to take it all to pieces again in the morning. Right, let's just plug him in, and then do.
Is this going out to a customer?
Yeah, it will be. Yeah, this is a proper...
So
Yeah,
you'll have to make sure that whoever gets it knows that this one was built on the live stream, and then you can insert like a little James special QR code
This will be
in there, and then they could actually watch back this being made.
see your own amp being made live.
It's a bit
on
like,
there.
I wonder if you could do that. No, I'm not going to say that.
So,
I'll save that
In
for
fact,
after the stream.
I can tell you who this is going to. So you won't care about the fame of the live stream, because he absolutely won't care at all. One of these will be going on the back of the left speaker to none other than Mr. Phil Harding.
Oh,
There we go.
well.
he should be so lucky.
He should be so lucky.
Imagine if
Get
you
it?
could see the creation process of everything that ever happens. You just log in. To
I think that would be
YouTube somewhere.
terrifying. Some things you just shouldn't see being built.
What would you pick, Mark, if you wanted to see how
Babies.
something... Babies?
Yeah,
did you
I want to
say?
know how they're made.
Okay. Yeah, anyone in particular?
Just any babies.
Oh,
really.
okay. All right.
So, interesting question here from Rick, who said, do you think you might sell out one day to sell more, or is this 100% love? So, what we're doing right now, working 7 days a week in this building and the studio, we do not have days off, right? We are here out of absolute love for good audio. That's, as we said, that's why we started building these speakers. We wanted a great sounding system that didn't cost a fortune, and then it ended up people wanted them because they heard them. As I've just seen Mystic in the comments, he was one of the first guys that bought a bareback in December last year.
Thanks, Mystic.
Hello. And yeah, we now that we've heard what's possible and what can be done by two guys in a shed in Epping, it's
It's a very posh shed.
it is a very posh shed, and it's an expensive shed. It's been eye-opening, and it's inspired us to do more and more. So as I said, we've already got the Mum 6 in the works. We've got designs for Mum 10 being worked on. We've got a collaboration with Kerr Acoustic coming up soon to make a studio main monitor. And it's been an inspiring journey already. Please don't smash that amp up. You've only just built
It's
it.
very robust.
Okay, good. Perfect timing for a screw to fall.
That was the...
You got a screw loose there, Mark?
It's because I'm on foam and I haven't screwed the lid on.
So May said, is it possible to use other amps and only use the crossover? Not
No.
that I know of, because the crossover takes power from the
Yeah.
power supply on the NC252 amp, which powers the mid and woofer. So all of it is one system. It's one ecosystem that all kind of plugs in together, and it all talks to each other. And
I mean, you could do it. There are pinouts,
you could do it.
but you'd have to make your own. You'd have to power it somehow. And,
Yes.
make your own doo-doo. So there we go. So that's a bit neater than it was half an hour ago. So everything's wired up. Everything that needs to be glued in is glued in. All the connections to the outside world are crimped, soldered, and heat shrunk. And that's
There we
it,
go.
basically. So we've got a little 5-pin DIN connector, 5-pin XLR.
I was going to say, it's not a DIN connector.
It's not a MIDI cable.
With our cute little brand logo on it. Look at that.
That's there. So that's your connection to the screen. That's your speaker out. So that's your connection to the speaker cabinet. They ship by default with a very short fly lead that just goes from there straight into the speaker. A couple of people have commented on that, saying how does that affect sound quality?
Yeah.
And I asked the Electrons, and they said they didn't care as long as they can get from one place to the other. They're really not bothered about whether they have to go through a connector or not. So it doesn't affect sound quality at all.
Cool.
Analog
There's a
inputs, digital inputs. There we go. That's it. So screw the lid on, which I dropped earlier, which you would have heard.
Well, we've had a nice message from Mark Claydon.
hello, Mark.
Says, having been watching this stream for an hour or so, I've just realised with the glasses there is definitely a Dr. Bunsen honeydew vibe about Mark tonight.
Yes.
So there we go. That is pretty much how you make a Mum 8 amp. Manny said, is it possible to buy all the parts from you and just assemble it myself? You ship the drivers and electronics and I just build it. So that essentially is like a kit.
No.
We spoke about, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago. We were debating again whether to make a kit or not, but for now it's not something that's going to happen.
Also, there are limitations to the our OEM dealership with Hypex
and Purify.
So I can't sell you things on their own.
So yes, we can't sell you Purify woofers or Hypex modules if they're not in a speaker, basically. That would be against our terms of contract.
drivers, we're not an authorised dealer for standalone Blisma drivers. We can sell you berylliums as an upgrade to a silk, but if someone randomly gets in touch and says, have you got beryllium mid drivers in stock? And we say yes, and he says, can I buy a pair? And has no previous business with us or is anything to do with the mum ecosystem, then it's no, you can't.
So there's a comment here from Andre who said, what about NCore X? So that is, for those of you that don't know, right now we're using the NCore amp ecosystem by Hypex, and there's a new NCore X module ecosystem, which is just better in every aspect. It's got lower distortion, even though there's basically none already in what we've got. Lower distortion, more efficiency, and so on. That's the whole concept of the MUM, modular upgradable monitor, is that you can modularly upgrade. So right now we don't have any NCore X modules. I don't even know if they're available to OEM partners.
They are available, but there's only one. It's the same with the Purify modules. So there's one fairly, relatively high-powered module. I think it's a 400-watt module that is available, and it's mainly to the DIY market for 2-channel amplifiers for those listening to hi-fi speakers with passive crossovers. So not suitable for what we're doing yet. Whether there's, and it would need to be, so we might go the NCore X route in the future. I think we'll probably certainly go the Purify route sometime.
So talking about modularity, there is an interesting comment here from Martin who said, how do you make the woofers swappable? So they're not. We only sell one woofer with the MUM8, and that is the Purify PTT8. And the reason we only sell one woofer is because it is better than any other woofer we have heard. It technically on paper measures better than any other woofer available on the market. The distortion is insanely low thanks to its rippled surround. And there are so many benefits. Oh yes. So you might have seen on the original prototypes that we made that we were using Dayton Audio woofers. Correct, we were using those on the original version, but when the Purify woofers were released, they just destroyed the Dayton Audio woofers in a comparison. They are leagues ahead, and so far we've not found anything that's better than them, so there's no point in offering any kind of woofer upgrade just yet.
Yeah, and obviously all woofers have different sizes, dimensions, even if they're an 8-inch, and different or small parameters as well. So a woofer is very much in a system with its cabinet. So it would be very difficult to have a cabinet that would, or a speaker where you'd be able to, and I don't know why you'd want to go from an 8-inch to an 8-inch anyway.
Sure.
The parameters are going to be different, so it's very difficult to have an upgradable woofer. But with the 6, you will be able to hugely upgrade from a 2-way to a 3-way.
Yeah. So there's a question here which Sir Freak has said numerous times, and I'm sorry I haven't read it out. There are just lots of comments and I haven't seen it. Sir Freak said, for connecting the NL8 connectors in a 3-way configuration, is it better to use pairs 2 to 4 or 1 to 3?
Doesn't matter. Again, the electrons don't care. So I've gone top down. So the tweet is connected to 4 plus and minus, the mid-range is connected to 3 plus and minus, and the bass driver is connected to 2 plus and minus, because should we have a system with 2 bass drivers in the future, then it'll be bottom up and top down. So if you look at the way ACC do it on their SCM 300s, which use a separate amp pack with NL8s, then it's each bass driver is 1 and 2, and then the mid's 3, and then the tweet is 4. So I've just done it backwards but missed off 1, because we've only got 3 drivers. I hope that makes sense.
Yes, and
it's all very, very serious. But just for a second, you just put your specs back on, and just like you just look down to your left. Who does he look like?
I don't know. Who does he look like?
To me, he looks a bit like Heston Blumenthal.
Oh yeah.
Look, you actually just from that angle.
Yeah, you do.
Really,
I can't unsee that now.
I know that is mind.
So up next, we'll be cooking a speaker
Well, it's
quiche.
funny you should say that because this, I haven't really been making an amp pack at all. This is an entire roast dinner.
Oh. Class D roast dinner.
Did you custom make your glasses? Because I see that there's were they a bit too small for your head originally?
No, I broke them.
Oh, okay.
So that's taped back on. That's it. We're getting back
Right,
into
Heston.
Yes.
familiar territory now.
One final question, and then I think we're done because Mark has successfully built an amplificator.
We're going to go over
And then we will go and get some floppy footage as well. Good old Flopster. So the final question is, are the Mum 8s suitable for home hi-fi, or are they so revealing that poor recordings sound dreadful? Now, how deep do you want to go with poor recordings? Because if you have something that clearly has some production issues, they will tell you. They are studio monitors. They're designed to tell you when you've screwed up your recordings. Having said that, you know, most commercial music is of a good standard. They will reveal issues. So if you listen to lots of metal, for example, and I know this from experience because I'm a massive metal head, the limiting in most metal tracks is, you know, very apparent. They will tell you that the engineers should probably have made some different choices, but that is apparent of the genre. With the Beryllium stuff, again, it'll reveal even more details, but they are pleasurable to listen to. We have 2 customers already using them in a hi-fi setting. Obviously, it's only 2 because we're mainly marketing it towards pro studios and pro users. But there are people out there using them in hi-fi, and we've got some other people on our magic board up there that are talking to us in a hi-fi setting.
Come on, don't you want to hear music in the best possible way that you can possibly hear it, regardless of whether how good
but
or
what's
how not good?
what's the best possible way you could possibly hear it? Because there's a lot of hi-fi speakers that will colour the music, so as less well-recorded material sounds better than it is.
But then what's that doing to the stuff that's recorded really well?
It's making it sound even better.
Okay.
Arguably, you could argue otherwise. It's actually taking something away from it, which is the way I feel. But interestingly, all of our hi-fi customers have been in the industry. So whether it's John, who's been in broadcast for 40 years, or you know, ex-studio engineers, they all know what they're listening for, and it's honesty.
Sure.
But yeah, poorly recorded music will sound poor.
Which is kind of what you want from a high-end monitor, really. You want it to tell you when you're doing it wrong.
Yeah, there is something we haven't tried yet, which I want to, and that's the aluminium magnesium alloy drivers.
Yes.
Which, according to Stanislav from Blisma, they sort of enhance transient information. So his personal taste in music is a lot of 70s rock, which is really overcompressed and you know, squashed because it was going on vinyl as well, so it's even more compressed. So he sort of developed the aluminium magnesium alloy driver to enhance dynamics and basically colour the sound and kind of bring some of the details out, which is great for what you'd want for a listening experience on material like that, but not so great for a studio monitor because that's adding something to the sound that you don't want. You want anything added to the sound you want to be doing yourself. So we're going to try those because I want to hear them, and because I like a really dynamic sound. So I just want to try them and hear what they sound like. But we haven't yet because we've been primarily concentrating on the studio monitor paradigm thing.
Oh, apparently, just interesting fact there from Michael. Nitri is a Liechtenstein company, not German. They do have subsidiaries all over the world, though. Correct. So thank you for that correction.
Yeah, thanks for correcting us on that one. And it says it on the bottom of the bloody thing as well. I could have just read it, couldn't I? So,
yeah, yes, exactly.
You are correct. Thank you.
So, yes, I think we are done. We're all speakered up, amped up. We have built an entire Mum 8 over the last 2 streams.
Compared to the cabinet one, really, wasn't it? It was just basically me sitting here soldering for 2 hours.
That's basically how it is.
Crimping things on and moaning about people on audio forums.
Yeah,
Exactly.
but have you turned on BBC Two at any point in the last 10 years?
Yeah, it's pretty much that, isn't it? Or you could go to one extreme. Maybe we could sell this entire live stream to Radio 4. Or is it slightly too interesting?
For the Sleepy Go Bye Bye section.
The Sleepy Go Bye Bye section. And this week we will be talking about the history of roundabouts in Stevenage.
Reforge said, Mark, do not power that amp on, leave it to James. Yep, so that'll be my job next for that particular amp is DSP World.
That's what happens next. So I test it in terms of electrical testing, make sure the earth is earthing, all that kind of stuff, make sure nothing's going to blow up and it's all working. And then it generally runs for 24 hours. And then it goes to James, who does the...
And then I put it in a washing machine at 40 degrees for 4 hours, and all good.
Yeah, does the DSP magickery, and we definitely won't be doing a live stream on that, because that would be
boring as hell.
Wouldn't it? It's, yeah.
Yes, just click this button, click that button, type some things in.
Yeah.
But yeah, so thank you so much for joining us on this live stream. We have been building a Mummy amp. I hope you have enjoyed watching it, and yeah, you will see us in the next live stream on Sunday. What will that be, Sam?
Sunday the next of week.
Why am I being asked what the next live stream is?
Because I don't know what it is. Do you know what it is?
Is this down to me?
I mean, to be fair, he did tell me earlier, but I have a brain like a sieve. I just forget everything.
Well, we wouldn't know, because let's not forget we're just a trio of wankers.
Oh, of course, yes. And on that note, I will switch to the QR code of a grumpy nerd typing into his... Okay, first of all, Flopcat, there you go. There's Floppy. Oh, God, tell me when you're going to unplug your mic so I don't deafen the entire internet, please.
Unplug it, I just ripped it from my person.
Jesus.
Look at it.
Okay, there's a cat. Anyway, cat has been on screen. Oh, there's... There's a reindeer attacking me for eating his friend. Yes, anyway, thank you so much for joining us on this live stream, and you will see us next week. Goodbye.
Bye.